some of you are looking at me like, why do I know you? I am on the TV show Legacy List, but I was also on a TV show called Hoarders. That's why most of you probably know me. I've cleaned really, really messy houses for the last 20 years. I started doing this, 25 years ago. I always jokingly said this is really just grandson for a day. Right? When I was a kid, I cleaned my aunt's house every summer because my grandfather told me to. I didn't get paid. I think one year I got a comb and a $2 bill. And I was really excited about the $2 bill. But I've really been lucky for 25 years to help people. When I was 24, my dad, my stepdad, both my grandfathers, they all passed away. Same year. It wasn't like a bar fight, just bad luck. Everybody passed, and I had to clean all the houses. And at first, it was just a chore. It was a job. And I started cleaning the houses with the spouses, with my mom and my grandma. And as I started to clean the houses, they would tell me some stories. So now for the last 25 years, I've been cleaning out houses. And the one thing I always settle on is the stuff. Right? The stuff is what we some of us can't even move forward with our lives because we have so much stuff. But it's not the stuff that we care about. It's the memories and the stories attached to that stuff. Right? And so for me, it was really, really important as I got older in my career, how can I help people tell these stories? Because that's why we hold on to it. And I found as we started to share these stories, it was easier to let go of the items. So the name of my TV show, as you can see it, Boyd did a really good job marketing this event, so thank you. Legacy List is the name of my show, and I think people often want to know, what is a legacy list? And a legacy list is a list of the top 5 items that matter most in your life, that tell your family story. And I always tell families, before you start downsizing, before you start cleaning out your house, whether you're moving or staying at home with help, whatever you're going to do, I want you to write out that legacy list. I want you to write out those 5 items. And then you got to share the story. Because if you don't share the story, those items don't really exist. Now, you got to tell somebody. And believe it or not, I somehow got a TV show on this concept, telling the stories. Has anyone seen Legacy List? All right, good. Some people have seen it. It's a much more positive show. If you notice, we never talk about what the items are financially worth. Because guess what? I don't care. The minute you put a financial value on it, I believe you're disrespecting the story and the people that are attached to it. If it's so valuable, if you loved your grandfather so much, why would you sell the item, right? So I said I never want to talk about money. I just want to talk about the emotional value when we go through this list. For me, I think my favorite item, this is my ring, my dad's ring. He gave it to me the night that he died, and he had cancer. My dad actually had a really cool way to die. He found out, he thought he was having a heart attack. We took him to the hospital, and they said, no, man, you got cancer. You got like 3 to 5 weeks. That's it. Sounds awful, but for my dad, that's wonderful. He was not a fighter. He would not have been able to really fight for 3 to 5 years where you hear people. So my dad did what he did best, was he threw a party. He threw his own funeral, literally, and he got to hear all the stories. And people came up all night for about 4 hours. There was definitely some whiskey involved. And they told stories about my dad. And he got to sit up there on the throne and hear all the amazing stories about him. And then he was sick for about another week. And then he knew that night. He said, hey, I don't think I'm going to make it. I think this is it. And he said, everything you'd want to hear as a son. He gave me this ring. And sure enough, he died that night. So why does this ring mean so much? I'll tell you the story on the ring. It's a Tiffany's ring, that Tiffany's, the retailer. My dad was in advertising. If you know anyone in advertising, it can be a really good business or it can be a really bad business. And it was both for us. We would be rich and poor in the same year. My dad would buy a fancy car and then sell it by Christmas. Right? It was just a very chaotic life. And when my mom and my dad got divorced, my dad sold his house. He moved into an apartment across the street from us because he wanted to still be around us. And it was really actually kind of special. And he was broke. He had not paid my mom any money. It was very challenging. And my dad somehow convinced Tiffany's to let him do their catalog in his apartment. He was quite a good salesman. And so he finally had a way out. He had gotten, there's seats up front if you want, or in the back. You're good. Okay. And so my dad had convinced Tiffany's, hey, we're going to do this catalog. And they're like, great. And so he fixed it. He solved his problem. He was going to get paid. And he did the whole catalog, called in all of his favors, made a beautiful Tiffany's catalog. And when it got time to wrap it up and get paid, he had fallen in love with this ring. And he goes, instead of paying me, why don't we just trade? I'll keep the ring. You guys are good. Not the answer as my mom wanted to hear, obviously. What I love about that story is that's my dad. My dad was just wild, right? He would do whatever he thought at the time. But it also reminds me to always get paid. As an entrepreneur, that's important. So I wear this ring everywhere I go. Until last week, I was in Cincinnati for work, and we were at a Tony's Steakhouse, a really good steakhouse down in the suburbs of Cincinnati, and I was eating. I'd been told the burger was the best meal there is. And this is last week. So I took my ring off because it was such a good burger. It was really juicy, and it was dripping everywhere. And I took this ring off, put it down so I could eat the burger. The next morning I look around. Where's my ring? Don't worry, I found it, obviously. But I didn't know that Wednesday morning. And I was devastated. I called the hotel. I called the restaurant. They're like, we looked everywhere. We can't find it. I went through I unpacked all my bags. I went through the office. I did it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've lost my dad's ring. And I have dreams of, I've told this story to millions of people. It's in my book. I tell my sons about it. I have 6 sons, by the way. 7 kids, 6 boys, 9 to 14, 17-year-old girl. And so all my boys know about this ring. They're all planning on wearing it at some point in their life. And I lost it over a cheeseburger. And I was really, really upset, honestly. And my flight was at 7. I needed to leave my office at about 4:30 to make my flight. And at 4:15, the phone rings. And it's the manager of Tony's Steakhouse. This is not an ad for Tony's, but it should be. And he goes, you were so upset about that ring. I went outside to look just to make sure. And sure enough, he goes, it was sitting in the parking lot on the ground. And no one had picked it up in almost 24 hours. And luckily, I was like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I drive over, and he's like, I want to show you where it was so you don't think anyone took it. And it was literally right where my car was. Clearly, I had dropped it walking out of there. So this whole thing is a commercial for Tony's Steakhouse. If you're ever in Cincinnati, this ring has lives, just like a cat. All right, and every story that adds to it, it makes that item bigger, and it makes that lore even bigger. Right? And I came home, first thing I did was tell my sons this story. And I was like, guys, I lost the ring. And I put it in my pocket so I could build the story up more. Right? And I build the ring and build the stories and build the stories. And to me, that's what matters. Because when I'm gone, the ring will be here. But it's not about the ring. It's about the story. Right? If you tell the stories, man, you live on forever. And that was my dad's biggest goal, was to live forever. That's not possible. But my sons, I have 6 boys, they never met my dad. But they can tell you every story about my dad and my grandpa because they know the legacy list. I'm going to tell one more story just to kind of prove our point here, and then we'll get into it. I had a lady, if you've seen Legacy List, the very first episode, there was a lady named Linus. This is probably my favorite story. Even when I filmed the show, I was still figuring out my theories on a legacy list and how important is it. And I was cleaning out the house. She had had a caregiver. She was ready to move into senior living, an independent senior living. And so it was her mom. It was Miss Linus, who was like 75, probably 78. Yeah. She's still young. Yes, very young. Yeah. So she was 78. Let's say that. And her adult daughter, and then her like 19-year-old granddaughter, who was at William and Mary College. You might know it's a very good university in Williamsburg, Virginia. So very smart young girl. And I'm flipping through pictures, and I find a picture of a very beautiful woman. And this always happens when you clean houses. We have this thing called hot grandma. You always find a picture of grandma when she's 18 and she's wearing a skirt that's really too short for your grandma to be wearing. and she's beautiful. And we always yell, "Hi, Grandma!" And we hold the picture up. And we want to hear the story. It sounds sexist. It's not. It's really fun. I promise. So I go, "Hi, Grandma. Is that you, Linda?" She's like, "Yeah." And then the granddaughter says, "That's not Grandpa." Who is that man? And Lennis gets a huge smile, and she just goes, "Oh, that's Armando." And then she flips the picture over. And I'm like, no, I want to hear about Armando. It was a really good-looking man in uniform. And she goes, "Oh, well, my first year teaching at MIT, Armando was my lover." And then she flips the picture again. And I go, no, we want to know about Armando. And she goes, "Well, he was the Spanish professor." She goes, "I was an adjunct professor." She goes, "In fact, I was the first female adjunct professor at MIT." And she starts to tell the story of how they met. They had this torrid love affair. It was actually an awesome story. And she goes, "He was very handsome." She goes, "He's still very handsome. I looked him up on Facebook just the other day." And she goes, "I've thought about calling him." And the grandmother, the daughter is just kind of like not surprised, but in shock. And the granddaughter goes, "Wait a minute. You were the first female professor at MIT? Wow, that's incredible." The picture of Armando is how her granddaughter found out how related they were. A young girl at William and Mary, one of the top 20 colleges in the country, finds out her grandmother. She goes, "I thought you were just a student." And she goes, "Oh no, I was the first woman to teach there." Because we took time to tell the stories. Right? And it's one reason I partner with FirstLight. It's one reason Boyd and I we've not done this event before. We were going to test it here because we really want to see if people enjoy telling their stories. From a caregiver's perspective, we do have time. Right? We have time to tell the stories. We need someone to listen. And so we're going to practice today. We're going to practice a few people coming up and sharing their stories. Genevieve, people want Genevieve to come up. Let's do it. All right.
My name is Genevieve Policano.
Okay, Miss Genevieve, what am I looking at?
A doll that I sculpted, all right, a doll that I sculpted about 28,
All right,
Oh,
that
I'm
up a little
sorry.
bit. There we go.
about 28 years ago.
Okay, so she sculpted this about 28 years ago.
Yes.
But I went from carving to folk art, painted on furniture, and designing kitchens. And that's when I stumbled on doing dolls. There was a woman in town that did porcelain dolls. But this gentleman was coming in from Oregon and was going to give a 2-day seminar. And he had one video on this clay from Germany. And I said, "I'll buy that video." And that's what started a whole different career. I opened a shop and I sold them for 7 years. And the thing I used to be amazed at, anybody that came in the shop never said, "Could you do better?" They would say, "Can I pay you on time?" But it was, so everything came into play. The dress designing, the body, and you don't know what you're gonna do later in life, but I didn't start it until I was about 55. That's when I started to do it, and then I said, "You know what? The kids all finished college. It was my time to do something." And I was very fortunate to have a husband that said, "Do it." Encouraged me to do everything. And that's why I've gotten to this point.
I get to work with people over 75 like every day. I got a really cool job. And I hear these incredible stories. And what I've really learned is we're great at telling people what we're proud about for the other person. We're awful at telling ourselves what we're proud about ourselves. So I'm going to put you on the spot. This should symbolize part of who you are. What are you most proud of you?
Well, besides doing dolls, I always do a lot of cooking. And what I was able to do is help friends out. That's what makes me proud. I had a friend that had Lou Gehrig's disease, and his wife took such good care of him. I cooked for them at least 3 times a week. And if I went away, I froze food and would give it to them. And that's the way I felt. To me, Glen Rock was such a great, and is a great town, and I love being here.
I love it. Did she answer the question well? All right. All right, go back. Thank you. That was wonderful.
My name is Alicia Stroud. I'm Sasha's mother. This is a General Electric organ. It came out in 1970. Like most kids growing up, you remember Christmas, and you would make up a list and say, "Mommy, I want this, I want this." She's like, "Oh, get out." No. She got it for me for Christmas in 1970. I don't know why I held on to it for so long, but I did. I was musically inclined. I did get lessons. So I moved from this to a violin. I took lessons with a violin, and I still held on to this. To this day, I have this and the violin. My whole family is musically inclined. My mother sings. My sister sings and dances. My daughter, the multitask professional, she sings, she dances, she plays the piano by ear. She started playing this piano at 4 years old. We went to church and she started playing after we did choir rehearsal. It still plays. All keys still play. And she plays it every now and then. What else?
All right, so I get to ask questions.
No.
I'm a little nervous.
Why?
All right, what is this? First of all, how many generations have played this instrument?
3.
3. Okay, I love that.
I held it for my daughter, for her to play with. But she played on it a couple of times. Like I said, when we went to choir rehearsal at church, she jumped on the piano and started playing that. So this was just null and void. So I just started up and put it up for later.
So how many people, and this is a real question, how many people have gotten to hear music that originated here?
Everybody in the family.
Yeah. What things about your kid do you love that this instilled? What characteristics do you love that this instrument, that this item instilled?
That has brought the family together so close. It's something we all can take part of. One plays, one sings, one messes up, screams, sings the wrong note. It just brought a lot of family together, our family together. And to this day, we're still together, all 4 of us. It's my mother, my sister, my daughter, and myself.
All right.
My name is Sheila.
Okay.
My mother's family had 5 children, and in World War II, the first 2 boys were drafted. About 2 years later, the youngest child was drafted, and my parents were hysterical, and my grandparents, and they wrote a letter to the President of the United States saying, "Please don't take my last child." About a month later, he was drafted. They got a letter from the president, unfortunately I don't have it, saying, "We can't undraft him, but we will promise you that he will not go overseas." So he wound up in North Carolina, and the only words I remember, because he would have been about 110, 115 by this time, barrage balloons. That's the only words I remember. This is not barrage balloons. I don't know where this came from, but he was stationed down in North Carolina for several years, and thank God all 3 uncles came back safe.
I mean, this is an artillery flag, both by color and by design. This is really cool. This is the kind of thing I'd love to do more research on, because you can really, and it's funny, I've gotten really involved with like Ancestry.com, and I've gotten to talk to a lot of different museums. This is a really special, all these items are special, but to still have this is really, because this flew somewhere. I mean, it wasn't in the air, but this has been out for display for a long time. This is really nice. This is really, really nice.
And I was told not to clean it.
No, oh my God, don't clean it. No.
There's some stains.
Yeah, let's just say that's dye, but it's probably not. Yeah, never clean this. Don't put water near it. I mean, it should stay on, like, out on wood. And don't fold it when you're storing it. If you're going to store something like this, you want to roll it. You don't want to fold it. But this is
I treasure
absolutely,
this.
yeah, this is beautiful. This needs to be out. You know, a lot of people they're like, this is wonderful, I'm going to tell my family story. And then they like store it away somewhere.
Right.
Man, get rid of your china. Nobody's coming to use your china anymore. And turn that china chest into a display case for your legacy list items where everybody can see it. And I didn't mean to offend anybody on the China topic, but that is a very difficult conversation in my field. That's the kind of thing that needs to be seen. Hey, thank you. Let's hear a round of applause for her.
My name is Judy Boxley, and I've been here in Glen Rock for 45 years.
Okay.
And my mother,
Can I hold this up? Or?
oh sure, it's in two pieces.
Okay. All right.
I had never seen this before, and my mother came to live with us back in 1978. And when she died 25 years ago, I found this. And it's a hedge cross brought from Ireland by one of our ancestors, perhaps some 200 years old. Now, of course I don't know, but I'm so thrilled that I have it, and I'll pass it on to one of my children.
The original title for my book was called Nobody Wants Your Stuff. And because a lot of us at this stage in our life, we feel like nobody wants our stuff. And you're all nodding your heads. I know you have felt that way. Well, I can prove to you, I can promise you, it's not that. It's they don't want that stuff. They don't want the stuff you want to give them. They do want other stuff. I tell families all the time, they may not want your china cabinet, but bring them into your closet and let your granddaughter go shopping in your closet and start telling the stories of the fur coats. By the way, fur coats are way back in. Right? The fur coats you couldn't get rid of 20 years ago, now the granddaughters really want them. But you just told an amazing story. And the point here is we're kind of reiterating, if you share the stories, the kids will start to hear the important part and they'll want those items. And this,
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Skip. I've lived in Glen Rock since 1999, and I love this town. I wore my special Woodstock T-shirt. It's not original because I was there originally in 1969, and I remember about 30% of it. You know, and it's not because of age; it's because of. Anyway, what I'm here to talk about. And I was really there. I was 19 years old. And to answer your question, the 5 most important things to me are my 4 kids and my wife.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's kind of what I'm leading into this. After I retired my career, I started doing a lot of scuba diving around the world. And this piece of 8, you can't see it, but this is very special to me. This was minted.
So tell us what it is first.
Yes, it's a silver piece of 8, which is the coins that the Spanish used to use. And in 401 years ago, Spain ran the whole world, and they had all the silver mines in Peru, and they used.
No, okay.
to dumb it down, he knows a lot about this topic, so he's using words we don't all know. This is a 400-year-old.
401.
401-year-old silver Kennedy dollar, basically, is what this is.
Actually, Kennedy wasn't around that time, but it's. You know. But the interesting story of this is they minted it in 1622, and they sent it to Cuba to put on a ship. The ship took off for Spain to deliver all these coins that were minted, and a hurricane hit, and it was swept into the Gulf of Mexico, and for 350 years, until 1985, it sat at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico for 350 years. And if anybody knows the story of Mel Fisher, how many people know that story? Anyway, Mel Fisher was the guy who found it and made a big business out of it. And me being a scuba diver, I went down to the Key West and I joined him on one of his trips there. But he found it, I didn't find it, I didn't get this out of the water. He had brought up a lot of the stuff. The real interesting thing about this is there's a lion imprinted in the coin, and the lion is facing this way. Well, when the first batch of coins originally did get back to Spain, the king was so mad because the lion was supposed to go this way, facing the king on the thing or something, and he sent his people back and they beheaded the guy who minted the coin because he was dyslexic. So that's the original dyslexia. And my family knows all about my love of scuba diving, and half my family scuba dives, and this is a great thing to pass on to them as well as other things. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, don't go anywhere. I got questions for you now. Okay. You obviously like history,
Yes, I love this.
new and old history, and adventure. Let's dig a little deeper. What does it really mean to you to hold something that's 401 years old?
It shows how insignificant I really am. You know, it's 401 years old, and it was the whole Spanish Empire ruled the world, and they ruled Cuba, everything else. It just goes to show you we're just a dot in time. So that's the significance to me.
What do you want to tell kids, young kids, grandkids? What do you want to tell kids about the cool stuff you found and the adventures you've gotten to do?
Well, a lot of it deals with scuba diving. Those of you that know Pearl Harbor, well, just about everybody does. I scuba dived the ship that sits at the bottom of the Bikini Atoll when they did the atomic testing, and in there, the ship was the Nagato, and that's where Yamamoto picked up the phone and said, "Tora, Tora, Tora, start the attack." And I got a picture of me doing that. It's these kinds of things, but the message I want to give to them is treat people with dignity and respect them and let them tell their story and you tell yours.
I love it. I don't think I should say anything after that. I think that's good. All right, Steve, anything else you want to say? Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is, I'm Eileen Kahn. I'm in the Glen Rock Chamber. I live in Fairlawn, but I grew up in Glen Rock on Central Avenue. But when I was a little girl, my parents took me to the first movie I ever saw, and it was Cinderella. And I saw the mice, and I fell in love with little things. If it was little, it was great. And that has run my life. So this is, it looks like an ashtray, and maybe we can leave it on the side, people can look at it, with a little paper boy who's holding a newspaper, and I guess it's brass, I don't know what the base is. At my grandmother's house in Patterson, it sat on the mantle. And I was a little girl. I couldn't even reach the mantle, but it was little, and it was like a little boy, and he's got a very Art Deco face. I think he's probably 100 years old. And all I wanted was that. I had to have that. And when we would go there for holidays and there were presents being given out, all I wanted was that. I didn't care what was in the wrapping paper. So eventually, when it was time to look for things, I found that and I said, now I'm happy. And not to bury the lead, I love little things, and that's what life is about. It's the little things that make a difference. And even now, when I buy something, I always say to my husband, either I can wear it, consume it, or it has to fit in my hand. So this way there's not so much stuff to get rid of, but my house is full of teeny tiny things. So just as a funny story, I just saw online from Japan these miniature books. They are miniature pop-up books, and you make them yourselves. And I just got some sent to me from Japan, wrapped in Japanese newspaper, and I will go blind putting them together, but it's so teeny, it's so precious.
Okay, tell me about that relationship. Like, what is so great about this? About this?
So it's very interesting. My grandfather was born in the United States. His grave is over on Midland Park, in Midland Avenue, and it was very unusual. But my great grandfather came over, so they've lived in Patterson their whole lives, and we would go there every single week. My father would come, but my mother said, "Take the kids to Grandma," and then we would be left in the house to wander around and eat candy from the candy drawer. They had these little sugar cubes. Remember, you guys, the sugar cubes that had the little icing on the top? And I never understood this till way later, that if you put that sugar cube in a cup of tea, the flour would float to the top, which, I just ate the whole damn thing. But going to my grandparents was such a special thing because they had so many old things, and they were in this country for extra generations, and some, Jewish families were. They came in 1899. My grandfather was born here in the United States, so that's kind of unusual. And everything in their house had a meaning for me, and had a meaning and a purpose. They had a laundry chute. We used to throw things down the laundry chute. So weekends at my grandparents was wonderful. But I always remember my mother said, go, take the kids to Patterson. And my father would like disappear. We'd play a game called Society Dice. We'd have oatmeal. She made us Ovaltine. I mean, these are very, very solid memories. But I never had the nerve to say, Grandma, can I have that? It just sat there looking at me.
Okay, so now we're talking about a lot of stuff here. First of all, you never had the nerve to ask your grandma.
I was a little girl.
Let me tell you something. If you read my whole book, I'm going to use your line here, not to bury the lead. At the end of my book, it's all about tell the stories, and then if there's something you want someone to have, now is the time to tell them. It is also now is the time to share it with them. It is the days of, all of us sitting in a room to read the will, and then we get the items dispersed. That's so silly, right? And it's not going to happen, by the way. Someone sends you an email and you find out you got something. It's really important to share those items with them now. The second part I love about this is the paper boy, the concept of a paper boy. How many of us knew someone in your life that was a paper boy? Raise your hands. Everybody did. My wife was a paper boy in Boston, in a tough part. She was a newsie. And we still have her paper boy bag that was on the front of her bike. Her grandfather was a paper boy. Just the other day, my mom told my 14-year-old boy to go be a paper boy. He's like, what's that? Yeah. But that's disappeared. Paper boys don't exist anymore, especially in Atlanta. You'd get shot if you were delivering papers in Atlanta. And it's really crazy how it's changed. My 14-year-old is trying to get a job. And it's really hard for a 14-year-old to get a normal job. And I was like, well, we were paper boys. And then I worked at a pharmacy. Then I worked at McDonald's. None of those places he can work. But I just think the concept of, even for me, what I love about this is this is hard work. I mean, I think I was delivering prescriptions for a pharmacy at 14, maybe 13 on my bicycle. I'd go after school, and then he would give me a bag of pills, which would that work anymore these days? No. And I would ride, I would just have probably $5,000 worth of medicine, and I would just ride around the neighborhood delivering pills. But for me, I put such a value in hard work because of the generations before me. Right, and we all learned to work because of our grandparents and our parents and even great-grandparents.
I have an adjunct story.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
So I'm in the League of Women Voters in Fairlawn. I'm the president, and there's so many women with so many great stories in the league. And one of those members turned 100, and she's a dear, dear friend of mine. And she had a birthday party in March, and when she was 80, she gave away a lot of jewelry. And when she was 90, she gave more jewelry away. So at her 100th birthday party, we wrote some things for her to say. And she said, those of you that have my jewelry, I would like it back. So if you do give something away, careful. You might still be wanting it.
That is a really good story. I will tell you, once you give something away, it's no longer yours. I get a lot of mothers that say, well, you can have the table, but it has to go in this room or that room, and they try to direct where it goes. This is wonderful. I love it. I'm going to give it back to you. I don't want to drop it.
Yeah, but if anybody wants to see it, I'm here, and it's so teeny.
I think your theme is exactly right. It's the small things that matter. It's the small stories. I think let's leave it at that. Hey, thank you. Guys, I think we did a good job. I hope, did everybody enjoy it? Did you enjoy hearing the stories? Boyd, I know you feel the same way. I hope that this can be an ongoing thing in the community.
Wonderful. Yeah, this was fantastic. And yes, I was a paper boy. No, this is fantastic.
I love it.
I think it was a wonderful talk, and everyone got to share, and I believe I got a lot of good feedback, so we'll continue on. And thank you.
We have one other thing.
Thank you.
We have one other thing, I believe, correct?
Another item?
Yeah, come on up.
Yes. Hi, I'm Kimbrough Taylor from FirstLight Home Care at Corporate, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to congratulate and thank Boyd for 10 years at FirstLight Glenrock. Clearly, by this event today, such a wonderful part of this community, and we just thank you so much for everything that you do. We have a whole bunch of balloons and things. We'll take some photos afterwards.
us also, the Glen Rockin' seniors, that's who we are really here. But we want to say thank you very much to Matt and all he's done and coming here and making this happen. So I really appreciate everything you've done here today and just everything you shared.
Thank you. This was awesome. You guys did a really good job. It's I've never done this before, and I just love it. I want to do it more. I think the stories are amazing. Thank you guys so much. We'll stick around, take pictures. If anybody wants to talk privately, we're here. Thank you guys, and have a great day.
There's foods and gift bags in the back. Things, take some stuff, food, everything. It's all here. Okay? Wonderful. Enjoy.